This is a COVID 2020 Mother's Day, and I've been reading things books that I've laid around and wondered about. This one is a wonderful little anthology of Western short stories I had overlooked and picked up. Would like to read a piece for you. It's only about 7 pages long, and will take a few minutes. I'll read it in 3 sections so that you can change or drop out, but it's so unusual for the genre. Excuse me, it's not COVID. The author of this piece is Oliver Farge. The name of the short story is The Young Warrior. Lafarge was alive between the years of 1901 to 1963. He was born a member of an elite East Coast family and was educated at Harvard. His anthology his anthropology studies took him to New Mexico, where he became fascinated with Navajo Indian culture. Lafarge's 1929 novel, set amongst the Navajo, Laughing Boy, was an immediate bestseller and won the Pulitzer Prize. As D. Brown, the author of Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, once remarked, Lafarge's Navajos stand amongst the first real Indians to appear in fiction. Lafarge's other Western fiction includes The Enemy Gods, 1937, and the short story collection A Pause in the Desert, 1959, in addition to writing fiction and later working as a columnist for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Lafarge continued his career as an anthropologist, leading expeditions to Mexico and Guatemala. For many years, he was president of the Association of American Indian Affairs. The Young Warrior was first published in Esquire in 1938. The Young Warrior. We had good profit and good fun, he said. Truly, we were much amused, and on the way home we laughed a lot. And I tell you that Nantai, he is a great leader. He was about 18 years old, at the age when young men wish to prove themselves and to recite their exploits in the presence of young women. He sprawled beside the fire in the camp of his cousin's band, aware that he had an audience of men who had proved themselves on the warpath. Old men, boys his age who had not yet gone fighting, and girls. The fire burnt generously in front of his cousin's wickiup. He had an audience, and he had something to tell. He wore the usual knee-high Apache moccasins, a breech cloth, a white man's coat of very fine green material, much too large for him, and a heavy turban of shining blue silk covered with a design of small pink and yellow flowers. Across his lap he nursed one of the new short rifles that load from the back. Supper was over. He'd been quiet, saying nothing about himself, until at last one of the old men asked him about the war party. He lit a corn-husk cigarette, seeing that they all waited, listening. He went on with his narrative. Now and again a man grunted approval. From time to time a woman laughed. We set out on foot for the Mexican settlement at Cottonwood River. There were 5 of us young men, and Nantai, who had agreed to come with us as our leader. The raid there was nothing. Most of the people had gone further east for a fiesta, so we simply took what horses we could find, a small amount of goods, and set the houses on fire. The few who were there ran away, and we did not bother hunting for them. There was really very little there. We each got a horse. That was about all, and Nantai took us to the north to see what we could find. The next day we came into the sight of the road that runs from far east to the big settlement at Muddy Flat. We rode to the westward in sight of it. About noon we came up with a train of 4 wagons heading west. Nantai took us around in a circle and showed us how to watch them. These were Americans, and we young men were greatly interested in studying them. There were 10 American men, several of their women, and 2 Mexicans. The wagons were drawn by oxen. We spent the day studying the party, while Nantai set Comes Fighting to scout the back trail and Crooked Nose ahead to make sure that they were traveling alone, and no one would interfere with us. Sometimes we rode or walked just out of sight, watching them. Sometimes we hid in the sagebrush and let them travel by us. They say that Americans are very great fighters. That may be so, but they are easy to scout. If one sits still and makes himself hard to see, the peaceful Indians may nonetheless see one. The Mexicans do sometimes, but the Americans almost never. It is the color of their eyes, I think. By nightfall, we knew them pretty well, and after dark we came in close and enjoyed ourselves watching how they did. Back when we were at peace with the Americans, before they tied up our chief and flogged him that time, Nantai used to go among them. Now he pointed things out to us. For instance, save one man, they sat staring into the fire, blinding themselves. They built their fire large here in enemy territory, and they slept close to it. The one man who kept his back to the fire, there were things about his way of dressing that Nantai told us to notice. He said that the man was surely one of the Americans from Taos, the ones who go everywhere trapping beaver. Those men are dangerous, he said. It was because of the trapper that their night guard was well kept up, and it would not be easy to run off their stock. They had good saddle horses and some mules. When they had gone to sleep and we had studied their way of placing their guards, we went back to a place where we could camp. There we talked over what we had seen. We were amused about a young man and woman we had watched. The woman seemed to be the daughter of an elderly man, rather fat, who rode mostly in one of the wagons. We thought he was a chief of some kind. The young man wished to court her, but the father did not like it. During the day they dropped back behind the Mexicans who were herding the spare horses. But then the father mounted a horse and they separated. In camp at night they looked towards each other and yet stayed apart. We joked about the young man's chances and wondered what the father's objections was. The young man was well dressed, and he rode a good horse. The next day, some of us wanted to make a quick rush for the spare horses to see if we could drive some off. Nantai told us to be patient. We were no longer children, he said. It would be many days yet before the train came near to Muddy Flat. Let us see what turned up. So we followed them again all that day, amusing ourselves with the courtship and other such matters. To be continued in part 2.